Alright, in this video, I want to talk about an engine and show how we can actually learn some things from how an engine works concerning Christianity. I'm going to start here with some pistons. And I drew it like this so that you can see what's going on here. But ultimately, with something simple like this, with two pistons here, the red piston here would be directly behind the blue one, but I couldn't show you that with this illustration, so I have it off to the side here to show you that when the blue one is up, the red one is down. And what ends up happening with these pistons inside your engine block is it will end up spinning, right? And how this works is these pistons are inside of a little engine block here. We're oversimplifying here and making it small. And like I said, the red one would be like behind this one, but of course it would be down here at this level when the blue one is up. And what ends up happening in this engine here is that you have a spark plug. We'll just put an S there for a spark plug. And you'll have some fuel injected in there. And you'll have this thing called a manifold, which gets air in there. And when that piston compresses everything up there, the spark plug ignites it, and the fuel and air create a little explosion, right? And it forces this piston down, which causes this spin. And as it spins, this right here will then, of course, go up, which will cause the red piston to go up, compressing the air in the same little block here. And it's like a buddy team, right? One gets lifted up and gets the energy in explosion, and it comes down. And as they come down, the other one goes up, and it's a buddy team, right? When the blue one goes down, it pushes the red one up. When the red one goes down, it pushes the blue one up. And as that happens, this spinning action is what creates the power. The power that ends up spinning your wheels, right? Very simple, right? Oversimplification here, but it's that simple, right? So why am I bringing this up? Well, because we can learn that we, being one body, can work similarly as pistons, as Christians, where we go down to lift somebody else up, and when they get blessed, they lift us up, and it's like a constant lifting each other up, and it's creating power in the body of Christ, right? Or you can say energy, right? You're getting the spirit to flow, right? But when there's little issues, like you can take things going on here where one piston isn't working for one reason or another, right? Whether the fuel isn't getting in there, the spark plug is burnt out, the manifold is clogged or something, right? There could be many different issues. The engine block completely cracked, which you would have a big problem there. But if one of the pistons has an issue, well, guess what? It's going to affect the other one. When we have just the two piston system here, if, let's say this blue one here has some kind of malfunction with one of these systems here, the manifold, the spark plug, or the fuel, well, guess what? Even though the little chamber around this red one is fine, when the red one has the explosion to go down, it's not really going to get a lot of force because every time the blue one goes up, there's nothing happening. So the red one's only going to go up with the leftover force that it already created, which means it might not compress all the way to create the explosion that is needed there to trigger the spark plug and everything to happen, right? And even if it does go high enough, it might not compress completely, so every time it goes up, it's creating less and less power and less energy. So because the buddy system isn't working, failed, right? You can put this in even into the system of like a marriage, right? Working with God. If one of the partners is kind of drifting off, it's the other one's going to be drugged down, right? That's why you're not to be unequally yoked with an unbeliever, for example, right? Because the engine won't work. But there's interesting stuff we can also take from this as well. Because since you have these two blocks for each piston, or you have one block, but they have their own little compartment there for each piston, you can have like a straight 6 or a V6 or whatever, right? Where you have 6 pistons or 8 pistons or, whatever you got going there. And what we can see there is something that I would call dispensations, right? Where they all kind of work together. And if you don't believe in dispensations, it's kind of like the pistons aren't working, so the engine's not going to work, right? Kind of like the people who say we're saved the same way from Adam all the way through Revelation. Well, that means you're believing in basically one piston when, let's say, there's 6. Well, now the engine ain't going to work because you're taking one dispensation, one piston, and one piston can't work by itself. It needs at least one other for it to work, right? Or else it's going to really struggle. Perhaps you could do it, but it's not going to be it's not going to be much, right? It's going to be a struggle, right? It's kind of like, yeah, you can live without your legs, but it's not that practical, right? You can live without your arms, not that practical. You can live without your arms and legs, but it's definitely not practical, right? It'd be easier if you work the way you were supposed to, right? With your arms and legs. So when you want to mess that up and just basically destroy a section of your pistons there, and you want to cross out dispensations, your engine ain't going to work properly. It's not going to make sense. You're going to be having engine trouble with your engine light, and you're going to be sitting there as a Christian not understanding why things don't line up, right? You have inconsistencies in the way you read the Bible. You're going to have contradictions, right? And your engine light's going to be flashing, and you're probably going to do what a lot of people do and just ignore it, right? And that's what Christians do with their Christian walk, where they have these preconceived beliefs, right? And they don't want to let them go. And since they don't want to let them go, the engine light just keeps going and flashing until they just completely destroy their engine. And then it comes to find out that they could have just, figured things out from the beginning, but instead they got to basically replace the engine entirely or just buy a whole new car because they just totally jacked it up, right? All because they didn't want to face the facts that they need to check the engine and fix it. right? Eventually those contradictions and inconsistencies catch up to you. It turns into hypocrisy, right? The engine sputters out. But there's other things you can take from this as well, connecting again to the dispensationalism, where you have that manifold, which it's basically air, so like the Spirit of God coming in to each one of these chambers, but it comes into each one of the chambers separately, right? And it's like the Spirit of God being dispersed to each dispensation to have it do its own particular job, ministry, right? To fulfill its particular role, right? Where each piston can only do the job of it that it has in its role, in its place in that engine block, right? It can't do the roles of all the other pistons. It can only do the role of in the row that it's in, right? But it needs the air, right? You need the Spirit of God, or else the fuel isn't going to ignite, right? Fuel is flammable, but it needs oxygen, right? For that spark to go and for the fuel to ignite to create the explosion. No air, not going to work, right? So you can be using the air there as a metaphor for, you can, let's say in this instance, we can say prayer, right? Your prayer, your connection to God there, you have that cleared up where you have faith that allows the Spirit to come in. You got air, okay. And then for fuel, we'll say it's actually reading the Word of God. Now, if you're getting air, your spark plug is going to be fine. It can spark up, right? But with no fuel, air is not just going to combust by itself just because there was a spark, right? Or else every time you sparked something up in the air, it would blow up. There'd be explosions all the time, right? There needs to be fuel. So you might be connected to God with a prayer life. You have faith. You're getting air into the system. But with no fuel, you're not getting into the Word of God. Well, then there's no combustion. There can't be any combustion going on. So you're not going to fulfill your role in this little engine system. Right? You may, like, let's say that's it has 6 pistons here. You may be being carried by the other 5 pistons, right? And they might not notice what exactly is wrong for a while, but you're being carried by everybody else. But that can also cause more wear and tear and stress on the engine on the other pistons that are meant to work with all 6. So if one's not working, it might cause some extra problems, and it can short out to other pistons, right? It's kind of like a bad apple kind of thing. You know, it can cause issues there. You gotta do your role, right? And then if you got your prayer life, you got the Word, so you got everything you need there. That's when you just wait on God, right? That's where the spark comes in, right? To ignite that. And that comes from others. Others, they get empowered by God, right? Because the other pistons, like the blue one here, that's up there, it's shot up there. It has the prayer, it has the Word, and then God gives that spark to ignite that, which is basically like having a seed planted in your heart. It guts the water, and then it just kind of bursts forth, and it starts reaching for the light, right? So you get up close to God, boom, it shoots you down with a lot of force, a lot of energy, right? And what happens when you come down from that prayer and studying well, it launches other pistons up, right? So they get up there, they get into the prayer, they get into the word, God gives that spark, they come flying down with a lot of energy, a lot of power, and that shoots you up, right? And this is where you can connect to what Paul says, where he's telling Timothy with to preach the word and to be in season, out of season, to reprove, rebuke, and exhort with all long-suffering and doctrine. And this is basically like a buddy system of exhortation. Exhortation means to basically encourage and uplift one another. Sometimes you can do that by your example, sometimes by prayers, sometimes by rebuking, like Paul says, to rebuke and exhort, right? He connects it all together. You do that, and you got this buddy system going. So it's like this fluid, up and down. I know I'm just being messy now, but let's change the color here. Let's do yellow, like a light wave. You get this nice fluid, up and down. Let's use a different thing here so you can actually see. There we go. All right, you get this nice fluid thing, like you're creating this nice, beautiful wavelength, like music. You know, you ever heard a good engine going and the sound of it is just beautiful? It hums. Or sometimes even the rough ones, where it's revving, right? Because it's working well. They're working so well together that it just sounds nice. Sounds good, right? And when something's off, it doesn't sound good, right? And I guess people who are really good with engines and stuff, they can start to hear when there's something wrong. It might be something small, but they're like, something sounds off, right? Because all of a sudden this smooth up and down wave pattern here, I guess let's change the color here. Maybe it's not going quite like it ought to. So it's going up and then, right? So now the sound wave is all janky and stuff. And you're like, something's wrong with this engine. It shouldn't sound like that, right? It's not making beautiful music here. It's like somebody stepped on the cat's tail. Like, what's going on here? This is horrible. And it has to do with how smoothly the system is working here, right? And we can see that we can apply this to our personal walk with God, such as I was saying with prayer, reading the word, and having correct doctrine. Because you may have correct doctrine in one area, because let's say it's, again, 6 pistons. So you can have correct doctrine in the first and second, in the fourth and fifth, but then the third and the sixth doctrine that is important, you have it all jacked up. Like you believe, for some reason, you believe in replacement theology, or you over here, you believe in Satan's little season. Well, now your engine's jacked up. It's not humming. It's sputtering. And yeah, it may get you to your destination. But it's going to be a crappy ride. And you're ultimately going to have to bring this car to God, and he's going to judge it and be like, why didn't you take care of it? This car is all trash. All right? Because you can take all this and say this engine represents your life that God gave you. And even a born-again life. Where you're saved, right? Even if your engine just, right? You're still saved. Just like we see in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 1 through 5. Where the man was messing around with his mother there. He would have died in his flesh, but the spirit would have been saved. If he was truly a born-again Christian. So you can say his engine just crapped the bed, is dead. Well, now he has to answer to God for why he didn't take care of the car or truck that God gave him. So there's no reward. Now, if we get home and our engine is well taken care of, we get a reward from God, right? And again, this engine can represent doctrine, relationships in the church, relationships in a family, right? And each one you can say can represent different sections here, right? You can put it into different forms of metaphor. But for some reason today, the metaphor of an engine was just calling out to me. Maybe there's somebody out there who likes engines and needed to hear this, and it would help them to understand. And the only reason why they would listen to some Christian sermon is because someone was talking about engines. Even though I know I don't know a whole lot, and I probably used some terminology and stuff that was incorrect, and they're probably all upset about that, but it's kind of like me. I like watching football, and even sometimes watching crappy football. I may complain about it, but I'll still enjoy it nonetheless. But anyway, with all that being said, thank you for your time and attention. If you could just take a moment of your time to, hit the heart, smash all those buttons. Not the thumbs down one, though. Even share the video, leave a comment. These things help out a lot. And if you could take a moment to just pray that God gets the light of this ministry and all the ministries that he's truly behind out to the whole world, that he doesn't let us, the flesh of the world, or the devil silence us, censure us, or shadow ban us. And that God would provide to make sure I can keep this ministry going. And if you're a cheerful giver and want to help out in that way, there's ways you can donate in the info description, which would be greatly appreciated. And with all that being said, thank you for your time and attention. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.